The sound of heavy boots echoed through the long metallic hallway of the royal palace. Two armored guards marched forward, dragging a man whose wrists were locked with glowing bands of blue energy. The man's dark hair was messy, and his face was covered in dust from the crash. He moved slowly, his legs heavy from exhaustion, but his eyes were still bright and alert. His name was Rian, a human explorer who had been sent from a faraway planet to map unknown regions of the galaxy. His ship had been pulled out of orbit by the defense systems of the Zorath Empire, a powerful alien civilization that ruled hundreds of worlds. Ryan had tried to signal peace, but the Empire's patrol ships had already surrounded him. His ship had fallen from the sky like a spark from a dying flame, and when he woke up, he was surrounded by guards and strange creatures speaking in a language he did not understand. Now, as the doors opened before him with a deep hiss, Ryan found himself standing inside the royal chamber of Zorath. The walls shimmered with crystal panels that reflected the twin moons outside. There was no sound except the hum of energy that ran through the floor like a living pulse. At the far end of the hall sat Princess Mira, the only daughter of the Zorath Emperor. Her people called her the Jewel of the Stars. She was tall, graceful, and wore armor made of woven light. Her skin had a faint silver hue, and her eyes shone with a glow that changed color with her emotions. Though young, Mira had been trained as both warrior and ruler, her mind sharper than any blade. She looked at the human with curiosity. To her, humans were strange creatures, soft-skinned, fragile, and impulsive. But this one stood straight even in chains. There was something in his eyes that unsettled her, something she did not see often among her own people. The guards stopped a few steps away from the throne. One of them spoke in the Empire's tongue. "Your Highness, this human trespassed into royal space. His ship crashed near the border defense. What are your orders?" Mira stood up and walked slowly toward Rian. Her steps made no sound on the shining floor. When she was close enough, she tilted her head and studied his face. His eyes were calm, not filled with fear as most prisoners' eyes were. "Human," she said in a clear voice. "You entered our territory without permission. You stand before the royal house of Zorath. Do you understand the gravity of this?" Ryan's lips moved, forming careful words. "I understand, Princess. I didn't mean to trespass. My ship lost control after a magnetic burst. I was exploring. I meant no harm." Her brows lifted slightly. His accent was strange, but his voice carried honesty. She could not tell if it was courage or foolishness that made him speak so plainly. "Exploring?" she asked. "You risk your life to wander into unknown space?" "That's what humans do," he answered simply. "We explore, we learn. We make mistakes, but we try again." Mira crossed her arms. "Strange creatures, you humans. Always reaching for stars that don't belong to you." He smiled faintly. "Maybe the stars belong to no one. Maybe they're meant for everyone who dares to reach them." The guards shifted uneasily. No one ever spoke to the princess in such a way. Mira's expression remained calm, but her eyes glowed a soft violet, showing a spark of emotion. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked something unexpected. "Tell me, human, do you think I am not beautiful?" Ryan blinked, unsure how to answer. The question was so sudden that it seemed to break the heavy silence of the chamber. The guards froze, waiting for his response. Then, without meaning to, Ryan laughed. It was not cruel or disrespectful. It was warm and honest, the kind of laughter that carried life and surprise. The sound filled the room, echoing softly against the crystal walls. Mira's eyes widened. No one had ever laughed in her presence before. Not her servants, not her soldiers, not even her advisors. In her empire, laughter before royalty was seen as disrespect. But Rian's laugh did not feel insulting. It felt alive. "You laugh at me?" she asked, her voice low. Rian met her gaze without fear. "I laugh because beauty doesn't need to be asked about, Princess. You already know you are." The question itself sounds strange. The guards tensed, waiting for her to give the order to strike him down. But she did not. Instead, she stood silent, staring at the human with an unreadable expression. The glow in her eyes shifted again, turning soft and blue. For the first time, she felt something she could not describe. Mira turned away, walking back to her throne. "You are bold, human. Boldness can be a gift or a curse. I will decide which you carry tomorrow. Take him to the holding chamber." The guards obeyed immediately. They led Rian through a side door, down a long hallway lit by lines of cold white light. His cell was small but clean, with a transparent wall that allowed him to see the night sky. When the guards left, Ryan sat on the floor looking up at the stars. He could still see the twin moons of this world glowing like pale lanterns. He thought about the princess and her question. For a moment he wondered why someone so powerful and admired would ever doubt her own beauty. In her royal chamber, Mira sat silently. The sound of his laughter still echoed in her mind. It had been a sound full of freedom, something she had not heard in years. Everyone around her spoke carefully, afraid to offend. Every word was calculated, every smile polite. Yet this human, broken and alone, had laughed without fear. She stood by the window and looked out at the city. Floating towers rose into the sky, their lights reflecting on the silver rivers below. The empire was powerful but cold. Her father ruled with strict order, and emotions were seen as weakness. But tonight something had shifted inside her. She whispered quietly to herself, "Why did he laugh like that?" The next morning, Ryan was awakened by the soft hum of the door opening. A small drone entered and scanned him for injuries. It left a plate of strange fruit and a silver flask of water. He ate slowly, still wondering what would happen next. Hours later, the guards returned. They said nothing as they escorted him through long corridors filled with alien symbols. He expected another interrogation, maybe punishment. Instead, they brought him to a balcony garden high above the city. Mira was there, standing among glowing flowers. When she saw him, she dismissed the guards with a gesture. The wind carried the faint scent of crystal pollen. "You slept well?" she asked. "As well as a prisoner can," Ryan replied. Mira looked at him, her expression calm but curious. "You speak as if you do not fear what comes next." "I don't see fear helping me," he said. "If I'm to face death, I'll face it standing." Her eyes glimmered again, shifting to gold. "Strange human," she murmured. "You should fear, yet you stand there as if you belong among the stars." "Maybe we all do," he said quietly. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind carried the sound of distant engines and the hum of the city below. Mira found herself thinking about his laughter again, and how it made the world feel different for a moment. Finally, she said, "I want to understand your kind. Tell me what humans believe beauty is." Ryan thought for a moment. "Beauty is not in the face or the color of the eyes. It's in how something makes you feel. It's in courage and kindness and laughter. It's when something makes you forget fear for a moment." Mira looked down at her hand. "Then maybe my world has forgotten what beauty means." Ryan said nothing, but the sadness in her tone stayed with him. As the sun of Zorath began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the towers, Mira turned toward him once more. "Tomorrow I will decide your fate," she said. "But tonight you will walk free within this garden. Do not attempt to flee. The skies belong to my people," Ryan nodded. "I'm not running, Princess. I think there's more to see here than I expected." She studied him one last time before walking away. Her heart was calm, but her thoughts were not. Something about this human was changing her, piece by piece. And for the first time, the jewel of the stars wondered what her life would be like if she learned to laugh again. The next morning began with the soft sound of wind moving through the royal gardens. The air was cool and filled with the scent of glowing flowers that opened only when sunlight touched their petals. Birds with crystal feathers flew between silver trees, their wings leaving faint trails of light. It was a place meant for peace and reflection, but Princess Mira felt none of that today. She stood near the center of the garden, her hands clasped behind her back, waiting for the guards to bring Ryan. She had not slept much. The sound of his laughter still echoed in her mind. It had felt warm, alive, and strangely human in a world where emotions were hidden behind perfect manners and rules. When Ryan arrived, the guards bowed and stepped aside. He was no longer in chains, though. 2 soldiers stayed nearby in silence. His clothes had been cleaned, and the wounds from the crash were now covered with a thin layer of healing gel that shimmered in the light. Mira turned to him. "You are free to walk within this garden," she said. "You will not leave until I say so," Ryan nodded. "Understood." She watched him for a moment as he looked around. The flowers reflected in his eyes like tiny stars. He seemed fascinated by everything he saw. Most visitors from other worlds bowed before her or waited for permission to speak. But Ryan simply looked around as if the world itself were his equal. "You find our world strange, do you not?" she asked. Ryan smiled. "It's beautiful. Different from what I know, but still beautiful. On my planet, flowers do not glow and the air does not sing, but beauty feels the same everywhere." Mira studied him quietly. "You speak of beauty again. You humans always use that word. Because it's what makes life worth living, Ryan said. Even in dark times, beauty reminds us that there's still hope. His words made her think of her own world. The Zorath Empire was powerful, but most of its people lived under strict rules. Laughter, love, and curiosity were not forbidden, but they were controlled. Every act had a purpose, every word had a weight. Beauty existed, but only as decoration. For years, Mira had followed those rules without question. Now this human made her wonder why. Come, she said finally. Walk with me. They walked along a crystal path lined with small ponds that reflected the sky. Ryan could see the great city of Zorath far below, its towers rising like silver spears. Airships drifted between them, carrying supplies and soldiers. From up here, the city looked peaceful, but the hum of its power was strong. Mira spoke without looking at him. Do you hate my people, human? We shot your ship. You could have died. Ryan shook his head. I don't hate you. Fear makes people fight. Your people only protected their home. On my world, we do the same. His calm answer surprised her. She had expected anger or bitterness. Instead, his voice carried understanding. It was something she was not used to hearing from those around her. You think like no one I have met before, she said. You are not like the ambassadors who come to flatter our empire. I'm not here to flatter anyone, he replied. I came to learn. Sometimes learning begins with mistakes. They reached a small fountain where glowing water rose and fell in quiet waves. Mira sat on a stone bench, and after a moment, she gestured for him to sit as well. You speak of mistakes as if they are nothing, she said. In our empire, mistakes bring shame. Maybe that is why people stop trying new things, Ryan said. If no one is allowed to fail, no one discovers anything new. Mira looked at him thoughtfully. You speak like someone who has failed many times. He smiled faintly. Maybe I have, but each failure taught me something. Even falling from the sky brought me here. For a moment, there was silence. The sound of water filled the air. Mira found herself watching his face. There was something simple about him, something unpolished but real. He spoke without fear or pride. His words made her feel lighter, though she did not understand why. After a while, she asked, Do all humans speak with such courage? Not all, he answered. Some are afraid. But we learn to stand even when fear tries to pull us down. She turned away, her eyes on the horizon. Courage, she repeated. That word feels heavy here, Ryan said softly. Then maybe your world has carried rules for too long. Mira thought of her father, the emperor, who ruled with perfect control. She thought of the council who feared any voice that questioned them. Her life had always been planned, lessons, duties, appearances, ceremonies. She had been called the jewel of the stars, but she realized she had never been free to shine in her own way. They continued walking until they reached a tall crystal tree. Its branches shimmered in golden light, and its leaves whispered softly in the breeze. Beneath it was a wide bench made of white stone. Mira sat again, her eyes distant. Human, she said after a pause. Your laughter yesterday. No one has ever laughed in my presence before. Not my people, not even my teachers. Why did you laugh? Ryan looked at her calmly. Because your question was honest. You asked if I thought you were not beautiful. It was such a human thing to ask. You are beautiful, princess, but beauty is not only in how you look. It is in how you carry yourself and how you speak. You asked that question as if you were unsure. I laughed because I did not expect someone like you to doubt herself. Mira's eyes lowered. Doubt is weakness in our empire. Then maybe weakness is not as bad as you think, Ryan said. Sometimes doubt helps us see truth. His words stayed in her heart like a small flame. She had always been told to hide her doubts, to be perfect in every way. But hearing those words made her realize how heavy that perfection had become. They talked for hours, their conversation moving from stars to stories of Earth. Ryan spoke about oceans that stretched farther than sight, about mountains covered with snow, and about people who sang together around fires under open skies. Mira listened with quiet wonder. She had read about Earth in reports, but hearing it from someone who had lived there made it feel alive. When the light of the twin suns began to fade, Mira stood. You will return to your chamber for now, she said. But tomorrow you will walk the gardens again. Ryan nodded and bowed slightly. Thank you, princess. As the guards led him away, Mira remained under the crystal tree. She watched the stars begin to appear in the dark sky. She felt something inside her that she could not name. The sound of his voice and the calm truth in his eyes had awakened something long asleep within her heart. That night, She stood before her father in the Grand Council Hall. The Emperor was tall, his face stern and unchanging. Around him stood advisors dressed in black and silver. When Mira entered, they all bowed. The Emperor looked at her. "I hear you spared the human," he said. "Yes, father," Mira replied. "He is harmless. He is not a soldier. His ship was damaged, not armed for war." "Harmless or not," one of the counselors said, "humans are unpredictable. They are dangerous. We should send him to the mines or return him to space." Mira felt anger rise within her chest. He is not dangerous. He speaks with reason and honesty. There is much we can learn from him. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You are defending a trespasser." "I am suggesting that we understand before we judge," she said firmly. The hall fell silent. No one ever spoke to the Emperor that way, not even his highest generals. Mira's voice was calm, but her heart was pounding. The Emperor looked at her for a long moment before finally saying, "Do as you wish for now, but if he becomes a threat, you will bear the consequence." Mira bowed. "Understood." When she returned to her chamber, she stood by the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere below, Rian was resting in his room, guarded but free to breathe the night air. She thought of his laughter again, how it had felt alive, how it had broken through the cold silence of her world. She whispered quietly to herself, "Maybe beauty is not what we show. Maybe it is what we awaken in others." Far below in his chamber, Rian looked through the window at the same stars. He wondered why this world felt both strange and familiar. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed that his meeting with the princess was not chance. It was the start of something that could change them both. The next day began with a bright golden sunrise over the towers of Zorath. The palace reflected the light like a living jewel. Every window caught the sun and threw beams of color across the sky. Inside the royal garden, Princess Mira waited again beside the crystal fountain. Her mind was filled with restless thoughts. She had dreamed of Ryan's world the night before. She had seen oceans, green forests, and people smiling freely without fear. When she woke, she realized how different her world was. Everything around her was perfect but quiet. Her people did not laugh, did not question, and did not wonder. It felt heavy, like a cage made of light. When Rian entered the garden with the guards, Mira felt her heart lighten. He walked with calm steps, his eyes still filled with curiosity. The guard saluted the princess and stepped back. "Good morning, Princess," Rian said. Mira gave a small nod. "Good morning, human. You slept well?" "As well as someone in a golden cage," he replied with a small smile. Mira looked at him with raised brows. "You call my palace a cage?" Ryan looked around the shining towers. "It is beautiful, but beauty can still be a prison if it keeps you from the world outside." Mira stayed silent for a moment. His words cut deeper than he knew. She had never left the Empire's inner worlds. Her life had always been surrounded by rules and duty. She wanted to be angry at him for calling her home a cage, but she could not. Deep inside, she felt that he was right. They walked together along the path leading to the high balcony. The wind was soft and smelled of rain. Below them, the city spread wide like a sea of silver. The people of Zorath moved in perfect order. There was no noise, no laughter, no life beyond what was required. "Your world is peaceful," Rian said quietly, "but it feels cold." "Cold?" Mira asked. "Yes," he said. "Peace without freedom is only silence." Mira looked down at the city. "Our peace was bought with control. Long ago, there was war among our own kind. My father ended it by making rules that no one could break. We have known order ever since." "Order can be good," Rian said. "But when order removes choice, people forget how to live." Mira looked at him again. "And what do humans choose when they are free?" "Sometimes we make good choices," he said. "Sometimes we make bad ones. But even our mistakes belong to us." She thought about that for a while. The sound of the wind filled the silence between them. Then she said, "My father would not understand your words. He believes freedom is dangerous." Ryan turned toward her. "Then maybe he has forgotten what it feels like to be alive." Her eyes softened. "You speak as if you know him." "I don't," Ryan said. "But power can blind even the strongest. On my world, leaders sometimes forget the people they serve. They begin to protect power instead of protecting life." Mira sighed softly. "You speak like someone who has seen much pain." "Pain teaches faster than comfort," he replied. Mira walked ahead, her mind heavy with thought. Ryan followed quietly. They reached a chamber filled with old relics from the Empire's history. Weapons, flags, and armor stood displayed in glass cases. Mira stopped before one of the walls where a giant map of the galaxy glowed faintly. "This is the story of our conquest," she said. "Each light on this map is a world we brought under our rule. We called it unity, but now I wonder if it was fear." Ryan stepped closer. "Every empire tells itself that story, but the truth always waits underneath." Mira looked at him. "And what truth do you see when you look at me?" Ryan paused. His voice was calm. "I see someone who wants to be more than a title. I see a person trying to find what is real." Her heart felt a sudden warmth. For a moment she could not speak. No one had ever spoken to her that way before. Everyone in her world saw only her crown, her name, her beauty. This human saw something else. They left the chamber and returned to the open balcony. Mira watched the sky as ships moved like silver birds between the clouds. "You spoke of laughter yesterday," she said. "Do humans find laughter even when life is hard?" "Yes," Ryan said. "Sometimes laughter is what keeps us alive." Mira nodded slowly. "Then maybe I should learn how to laugh." Ryan smiled. "It begins when you stop fearing how others will see you." Before Mira could answer, a shadow crossed the balcony. A group of royal guards approached quickly. Their leader, a tall officer in black armor, saluted sharply. "Your Highness," he said, "the Emperor requests your presence in the War Council. The southern colonies are rebelling." Mira's expression changed. "Rebellion? Against the Empire?" "Yes, Princess. They demand freedom from the central rule. They have taken control of 3 supply stations." Ryan watched as her calm face turned serious. "Your world has rebellion too," he said quietly. "Not for long," the officer said coldly. "The Emperor has already ordered the fleet to strike." Mira looked at him. "How many civilians live there?" "Millions," the officer replied. "But His Majesty says peace must be restored at any cost." Ryan's heart tightened. "At any cost?" The officer turned to him sharply. "Silence, human. You have no right to speak in the affairs of our empire." Mira raised her hand. "Enough, he will speak when I say he can." The officer stepped back immediately. Mira looked at Ryan again. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried deep sadness. "Do not punish people for wanting to live freely," Ryan said. "If you destroy them, peace will never return." Mira looked away. "My father will not listen to such words." "Then someone must speak them," Ryan said. "Even if no one listens." She walked to the edge of the balcony. Her gaze followed the distant horizon where storm clouds were rising. "The fleet will leave within hours," she said quietly. "Thousands will die." "You can stop it," Ryan said. "I cannot go against my father," she said. "He rules the empire. Then he rules your heart too?" Ryan asked softly. She turned toward him, her eyes glowing faintly blue. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Perhaps he does." Later that day, Mira entered the council chamber. Her father sat upon his high throne, surrounded by commanders and advisors. The map of the southern colonies hovered above the table, glowing red where the rebellion had spread. The Emperor's voice filled the hall. "We strike at dawn. The fleet will destroy their stations before the infection spreads." Mira stepped forward. "Father, please wait. These are our people. They are not enemies. If you destroy them, more will rise." The Emperor looked at her with cold eyes. "You speak like a child. Weakness invites chaos. Order must be restored." "It is not weakness to listen," she said firmly. The room fell silent. Every commander stared in disbelief. The Emperor rose slowly. "Your time among the human has changed you," he said. "You speak with his words." "Maybe his words carry truth," she said. "Maybe we forgot what it means to be alive." The Emperor's expression hardened. "You will remain silent." "The decision is final." Mira lowered her head. "As you command." But inside, something began to stir. That night, she returned to the garden where Ryan waited under the crystal tree. The air was still. The city lights below shimmered like a sea of stars. "The attack will begin tomorrow," she said. I tried to stop it. He would not listen. Ryan looked at her. "Then we find another way." "There is no other way," she said. "Disobeying him means treason." "Sometimes doing what is right means standing alone," Ryan said. "But standing for life is never wrong." Mira looked into his eyes. They were steady, filled with quiet strength. In that moment, she realized how different he was from everyone she knew. He had no power, no army, yet his courage shone brighter than the stars above. You speak as if I could change the Empire, she said. Every change begins with one voice, Rian said. Mira turned toward the horizon. The first warships were already rising into the sky, their engines burning bright. She knew the cost of defiance, but the thought of thousands dying under her father's command filled her heart with fear and anger. Ryan placed his hand gently over his chest and bowed his head. Whatever choice you make, Princess, make it with your own heart. She watched the ships climb higher, their lights fading into the dark sky. For the first time in her life, Princess Mira felt torn between duty and conscience. The Empire expected silence, but her heart demanded a voice. The human had changed her world with a single laugh, and now his words might change the fate of an entire empire. The sun had barely risen over the crystalline towers of Zorath when Princess Mira awoke. She stood by her window, looking at the city below. Its streets were silent, as they always were in the early morning, but she could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her chest. Her thoughts returned to Ryan, the human who had entered her life like a spark in darkness. He had laughed at her the day before, and that laughter had lingered in her mind. It was not a mocking laugh. It was warm, honest, and unafraid. Her guards had frowned at his boldness, and yet she had not felt anger. Instead, a strange sense of curiosity had taken root inside her. Today, she knew, would not be like any other day. Her father, the Emperor of Zorath, had summoned her to the Council of Shadows, a gathering of the most powerful leaders and advisors in the Empire. They met rarely, and their decisions shaped the fate of thousands of worlds. As she walked through the grand corridors, her silver armor gleaming in the morning light, she thought of Ryan and his calm courage. He had spoken of freedom and choice, ideas almost forgotten in her world. She wondered if she could bring even a single spark of that truth into the council chambers. When she entered the hall, the air was thick with tension. The room was enormous, its ceiling high enough that no eye could see the top. Holographic maps of distant worlds floated above the central table, glowing with red and blue lights to indicate territory and military presence. Around the table sat generals, advisors, and ministers, all clad in black and silver. Their expressions were sharp, cold, and unyielding. Her father, Emperor Zoran, sat at the head of the table, his posture straight, his eyes like steel. When Mira entered, he did not rise, but his gaze held her still. "You are late, Princess," he said. His voice was calm but heavy with authority. "I apologize, Father," Mira said, bowing slightly. "You have been distracted," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Reports from the southern colonies are alarming. Rebellion is growing, and the fleet is ready for deployment. We cannot allow chaos in the Empire," Mira swallowed. She had already learned that the southern colonies were striking for independence, refusing to obey the strict rules of the Empire. Her father saw this as a threat to control, but Mira saw something else. She saw people who wanted to live freely, as Ryan had told her. "Father," she said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiation before sending the fleet. These are our people, not enemies." A sharp laugh echoed through the chamber. "Negotiate with traitors?" one of the generals said. "Do you forget the cost of weakness, Princess? The Empire cannot survive if mercy guides our actions." Ryan's words came to her mind. Sometimes doing what is right requires courage, even when it is dangerous. She held her breath, knowing the council would not like what she was about to say. "I do not speak of weakness," she said firmly. "I speak of life. If we destroy them, more will rise against us. Peace built on fear will not last." The room fell into silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. Her father's gaze was cold, but Mira felt a spark of resolve deep within her. "You speak as if you understand rebellion," Emperor Zoran said. "Have you walked among the colonies? Have you seen the chaos they create?" "I have not walked there," she admitted. "But I have spoken to someone who knows courage. Someone who understands what it means to fight for life rather than fear. That is the perspective we lack in this council." A murmur ran through the room. The advisors exchanged cautious glances. No princess had ever spoken this way in the Council of Shadows. "Your human friend has corrupted your mind," one minister said. "His ideas are dangerous. He is not Zorath. He will not protect this empire as we do." "I do not deny he is human," Mira said. "But he is not foolish. He sees truth that we ignore. We can learn from it if we choose to listen." The Emperor's eyes flashed with anger. "Enough, Mira. You will not question my orders. The fleet will strike at dawn. That is final. Mira felt a tight knot in her chest, but she refused to bow her head. "I understand your command," she said, "but I cannot stop thinking of the lives at stake. There must be another way." Her father's expression hardened. "Your words are noted, but they change nothing. You may leave the council." Mira bowed and left the chamber quietly. Outside, she leaned against the cold walls of the corridor, taking deep breaths to calm herself. She had spoken, even though she knew it would have consequences. For the first time, she felt the weight of choice, of freedom she had never allowed herself before. Later, in the quiet of the garden, Ryan was waiting. The crystal leaves of the trees shimmered in the soft sunlight. When he saw her, he smiled faintly, but his eyes were serious. "You spoke to your father," he said. "I did," Mira replied, "and he will not listen. The fleet will move at dawn and thousands will suffer." Ryan stepped closer. "Then we find another way." "There is no other way," she said. "Defiance means treason. I could lose everything, even my life. Sometimes standing for what is right comes at a cost," Ryan said. "The question is whether you are willing to pay it." Mira's heart ached, but she felt a strange sense of clarity. "I do not want to watch people die for fear," she said. "I cannot stay silent." Ryan placed a hand lightly on the edge of the fountain. "Then we act carefully. There is always a path, even in the shadows of power. We just need to find it." They spent the day walking through the garden, speaking in quiet tones. Ryan told Mira stories of his home, where humans chose their paths, made mistakes, and learned from them. Mira listened intently, absorbing every word. She had been taught that emotion was dangerous, that laughter was frivolous, and that freedom was a risk. But now she understood that courage and compassion could be stronger than fear and control. As evening fell, the twin moons rose over the horizon. Their light reflected off the silver towers, creating a world of shimmering beauty. Mira looked at Rian and felt the warmth of hope stir in her chest. "Do you believe it is possible to stop the fleet?" she asked. Rian nodded slowly. "It will not be easy. You will have to make difficult choices. But even one act of courage can change the course of history." Mira remained silent for a moment, thinking of the southern colonies, of the lives at stake, and of the voice of reason she had found in a human stranger. Her resolve strengthened. "I will not let fear dictate my actions," she said finally. "If there is a way to protect them, I will find it, even if it means standing against my father." Ryan's eyes shone with quiet pride. "Then you are already changing the Empire. Courage has a way of spreading even in the darkest places." The night grew darker and the stars began to fill the sky. Mira and Rian sat in silence beneath the crystal tree, the soft hum of the palace around them. For the first time, Mira did not feel alone. She had found an ally, a friend, and someone who reminded her of the power of laughter, hope, and truth. Far below, the city slept in ordered silence. But high above, in the garden of stars, a spark had been lit. A spark that could grow into a fire strong enough to change the heart of an empire. Mira stood finally, brushing her hands across her silver armor. "Tomorrow I will speak again," she said. "I will do what I can, even if the Empire does not understand." Ryan followed her gaze toward the horizon. "Then we prepare," he said. "The night is quiet, but tomorrow will test us. Stay strong, Princess. Your courage is more important than any fleet or law." Mira nodded. For the first time, she felt her heart aligned with her actions. She had a choice, and she would no longer let fear decide her path. The Empire was vast and powerful, but it had never faced the courage of someone willing to protect life at any cost. And with Ryan by her side, she knew that she had already begun a journey that could not be stopped. The shadow of the Empire loomed over them. But within the garden, under the twin moons, Princess Mira felt the first taste of freedom, hope, and the promise of change. The laughter of a human, once simple and fleeting, had set the course of a new dawn. The first light of dawn spread across the towers of Zorath, painting the city in shades of gold and silver. The twin moons, still faintly visible in the sky, reflected their glow on the crystal streets below. Princess Mira stood at the highest balcony of the palace, her silver armor gleaming in the morning light. She felt the weight of the Empire pressing down on her, but also the fire of purpose rising within her. Rian stood beside her, looking at the horizon. His dark hair was ruffled by the morning wind, and his eyes carried the calm determination that had first drawn Mira to him. He had been by her side through the council, the arguments, and the nights of planning. Together they had found a path, not of rebellion for the sake of power, but of protection for those who could not defend themselves. The fleet will arrive soon, Mira said softly. Thousands of lives hang in the balance. I must act carefully or everything will be lost. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder. And yet you do not hesitate. That is why change is possible. Courage is stronger than any fleet. Mira closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. I never imagined that a human could teach me something I had forgotten. About freedom, about life, about laughter. I feel like I can finally see clearly. Ryan smiled faintly. The hardest part is seeing clearly and then doing what must be done. They descended to the palace command chamber, where Mira's closest advisors waited. Unlike the cold generals in the council, these advisors had quietly supported her, though none dared speak openly against the emperor. Today she would need their help. Today she would need every ally she could find. She addressed them firmly. The fleet will attack the southern colonies unless we act. I will not allow innocent lives to be destroyed in the name of order. We must find a way to prevent this without sparking war. One advisor, an older woman named Nara, stepped forward. Your Highness, the colonies have begun arming themselves in secret. If we delay, there could be casualties on both sides. I understand, Mira said. That is why we act now. But we will act with caution and intelligence, not force. Ryan nodded. We have the advantage of surprise. We can redirect the fleet without bloodshed if we move carefully. Mira's mind raced. The fleet was already in motion, engines humming high above the Empire. The colonies were preparing for attack, unaware of the plan forming in the palace below. If they succeeded, thousands of lives would be spared. If they failed, it could spark a rebellion that would engulf the entire empire. The princess made her decision. We will send messages to the fleet commanders. They must be convinced to delay. We will send trusted envoys to the colonies to negotiate. No lives will be taken. Hours passed as plans were drawn, codes sent, and messages transmitted. Ryan assisted, translating human strategies into tactics suitable for Zorathian technology. The palace hummed with activity, but Mira's mind remained focused on the people she had never met, the lives at stake, and the truth she had learned from a human who dared to laugh in the face of fear. By midday, the first responses arrived. Some fleet commanders hesitated. Some feared disobeying the emperor, but Mira spoke with courage, addressing their fears, reminding them of honor, and showing them the strength of reason over blind obedience. Slowly, one by one, the fleet commanders agreed to hold their positions until a message could be sent to the southern colonies. Meanwhile, Ryan and Nara coordinated with envoys from the colonies. Word spread quietly through secure channels that the Empire sought dialogue, not destruction. The people of the southern colonies were wary but willing to listen. For the first time in decades, communication replaced conflict. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystal towers, Mira climbed to the highest balcony once more. She looked at the human beside her. Ryan, it is almost done. The fleets are held. The colonies are listening. You were right. Courage is stronger than any order. Ryan shook his head. No, Princess. You were right. You acted. Courage without action changes nothing. You made the choice. You carried it through. Mira smiled faintly. I could not have done it without you. The moment of calm was broken by a sound that resonated through the city. The Emperor's voice boomed over the palace speakers. Princess Mira, what is the meaning of this delay? The southern colonies must be brought to heel. Mira did not flinch. She stood tall, her silver armor catching the last light of the sun. Father, they are our people. They do not wish to die. We can restore peace without bloodshed. There was a pause. The Emperor's voice returned, lower and thoughtful. And who gave you the authority to decide? I have the authority of conscience, Father. And the strength of reason, Mira said. If we destroy them, we destroy the Empire's future. If we choose life, we honor the strength of our people. For a long moment, silence filled the air. Then the Emperor's voice softened. Perhaps you have learned something that I have long forgotten. Very well. The fleet will hold. The colonies will be given a chance to respond. You have done wisely, Mira. But remember, the weight of the Empire is still on your shoulders. Mira bowed. Relief washed through her, though it was tempered by the knowledge of the challenges ahead. I understand, Father. Thank you. As the Emperor withdrew his orders, the twin moons rose fully in the sky, reflecting on the city like silver mirrors. Mira turned to Ryan, who watched her quietly, his eyes reflecting the calm strength she had come to rely on. "They listened," she said softly. "Yes," he said. "And now a new dawn begins." The southern colonies responded with cautious optimism. Negotiators traveled from both sides, establishing communication and agreements. The first steps of peace were fragile but promising. Mira watched as people who had been poised for war instead spoke, listened, and found common ground. She realized that courage and reason, when combined, could reshape an empire. That night, Mira returned to the garden with Ryan. The crystal trees shimmered under the light of the moons, and the fountains sparkled like liquid silver. They sat together in silence for a while, reflecting on the events of the day. "You have changed my world," Mira said quietly. "Not just the empire, but me. I see things differently now. I understand courage, freedom, and life in ways I never did before." Ryan shook his head. "You had the courage all along. I only reminded you. You acted when it mattered." Mira smiled and laughed softly, a sound that had been rare in the halls of the palace. Ryan smiled in return, his laughter joining hers. The sound was light, full of hope, and it echoed through the garden like a melody. "Do you think I am beautiful now?" she asked, her eyes glimmering. Ryan looked at her with quiet honesty. "You are always beautiful, princess. But today your courage shines brighter than any jewel. That is what makes you truly beautiful." Mira felt warmth flood her chest. For the first time, she understood that beauty was not only in appearance but in the strength, compassion, and courage one carried inside. The empire had been tested, but a human stranger had reminded her of what truly mattered. Laughter, courage, and choice had reshaped not just the lives of the colonies but the heart of the princess herself. In the days that followed, Mira continued to work with Ryan and her advisors to strengthen communication with the southern colonies. Orders were rewritten, commanders were briefed, and new strategies emphasized understanding and cooperation over fear. The empire remained strong, but it had grown wiser, guided by principles of life and freedom rather than pure control. One evening, as the twin moons reflected on the palace towers, Mira stood again in the garden with Ryan. They looked at the city below, now alive with light and quiet activity. The people moved with purpose but without fear, a small but significant change in a world that had known only order. "You have changed more than the empire," Ryan said. "You have reminded me of what courage can do when it is shared." "And you reminded me to laugh again," Mira said, smiling. "I will not forget that, human, never." Ryan laughed softly. "Then perhaps the empire is ready for more than just order. Perhaps it is ready for life, hope, and laughter." Mira looked at him, and for the first time she felt that nothing was impossible. A single choice, a single act of courage, had begun a chain of change that would ripple through generations. She had learned that life was not merely to be survived but to be lived fully, with courage, with laughter, and with heart. As they stood together beneath the crystal trees, the wind carrying the soft scent of glowing flowers, Princess Mira realized that the empire had not just been saved from war. It had been awakened to something greater, a chance to embrace the beauty of life itself. And somewhere deep in the palace, the laughter of a human echoed still, reminding her that even in the vastness of the stars, courage, hope, and laughter were the true forces that could change everything.